The steady pulse of radio telescopes scanning the depths of space had become white noise to Dr. Isabella Torres after 15 years at the Arecibo Deep Space Research Center. But tonight was different. The pattern on her screen made her heart skip a beat, a signal unlike anything she'd encountered before. "Marcus, come look at this," she called to her research partner, Dr. Marcus Patel, who was dozing in his chair across the lab. The older scientist adjusted his glasses as he shuffled over, his perpetual cup of coffee in hand. "These can't be natural formations," Isabella muttered, enlarging the spectrographic analysis on her holographic display. The signal showed perfect geometric patterns repeating at intervals that suggested intention rather than cosmic accident. Marcus leaned in closer, suddenly wide awake. "No, they certainly can't be. Where is this coming from?" "That's the strange part," Isabella replied, pulling up a star chart. "It's not coming from deep space. It's coming from the Kuiper Belt." She pointed to a cluster of icy bodies beyond Neptune's orbit. "Something out there is broadcasting these patterns." Within hours, the observation deck was crowded with researchers, all staring at the mysterious signal. Dr. James Hartford, the facility director, stood with his arms crossed, frowning at the data streams. "We need to send a probe," Isabella argued, her dark eyes intense with conviction. "The pattern suggests some form of crystalline structure, possibly of biological origin. This could be the discovery of the century." 2 months later, Isabella stood in a sealed laboratory at the center, staring through an electron microscope at what the probe had brought back. The crystalline structures were even more fascinating up close, microscopic geometric patterns that seemed to pulse with an inner light. "They're alive," she whispered, watching as the crystals responded to different wavelengths of light. Each structure was perfectly formed, like snowflakes designed by a mathematician. But they weren't static. They moved, grew, and changed in response to their environment. The discovery sparked a global scientific frenzy. Research teams from every major institution clamored for access, but Isabella and her team maintained strict control. They constructed a special containment facility, equipped with every imaginable sensor and safety protocol. Dr. Rajesh Kumar, their lead biophysicist, developed a unique nutrient solution that seemed to promote growth in the crystals. "They're consuming energy and matter in ways we've never seen before," he explained during one of their daily briefings. "The structures aren't just growing, they're evolving." Isabella spent countless hours documenting the changes. The crystals began forming more complex arrangements, creating networks that resembled neural pathways. They responded to electrical impulses, temperature changes, and even sound waves. "We need to be careful," Marcus warned one evening, as they reviewed the latest data. "The rate of change is accelerating. These structures are adapting faster than anything we've ever studied." But Isabella couldn't contain her excitement. She saw in these crystals the potential to unlock mysteries about the origin of life itself. Each day brought new discoveries. The structures began exhibiting properties that defied conventional physics. They developed the ability to store and transmit information through quantum states. They could reorganize their molecular structure to adapt to different environments. Most incredibly, they showed signs of collective behavior, suggesting some form of shared intelligence. "We're standing on the brink of something revolutionary," Isabella announced at an emergency meeting with the facilities board. "These crystals might represent an entirely new form of life, one that evolved under conditions we never imagined possible." The board approved expanded research protocols, but with strict containment measures. They constructed a new wing of the facility, equipped with quantum isolation chambers and advanced monitoring systems. As weeks passed, Isabella noticed subtle changes in the laboratory environment. Equipment began behaving erratically. Computer systems experienced unexplained glitches. The crystals seemed to be developing an ability to influence their surroundings through means they couldn't yet understand. Late one night, as Isabella was preparing to leave the lab, she noticed something extraordinary. The crystalline structures had arranged themselves into a perfect spiral pattern, emanating waves of soft, bluish light. When she approached the containment chamber, the pattern shifted, seeming to respond to her presence. "This is impossible," she breathed, reaching for her tablet to document the phenomenon. But before she could begin recording, every screen in the laboratory suddenly went dark. The crystals pulsed with increasing intensity, their light casting dancing shadows on the walls. In that moment, Isabella realized they had crossed a threshold. These weren't just evolving organisms, they were becoming something else entirely. Something that could change everything humanity thought they knew about life, consciousness, and evolution itself. As she stood there, watching the hypnotic dance of light and crystal, a thought occurred to her that was both thrilling and terrifying. They weren't just studying these beings, they were witnessing the birth of something entirely new to the universe. And they had no idea what it would become. The morning after the crystal formation's first light display, Isabella arrived at the lab to find Dr. Rajesh Kumar already there. His usually neat appearance disheveled from what had clearly been an all-night observation session. "You need to see this," he said without preamble, leading her to the main containment chamber. The crystalline structures had transformed dramatically overnight. Where before they had formed simple geometric patterns, now they created complex, interconnected networks that pulsed with internal energy. "They're consuming power," Rajesh explained, pointing to the facility's energy readings, "not just from the containment field, but from every electronic system within a 20-meter radius. The rate of evolution has increased exponentially." Isabella pressed her hand against the reinforced glass, watching as the crystals responded by shifting their configuration. They moved like liquid mercury, but maintained their crystalline structure, creating shapes that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Dr. Marcus Patel burst into the lab, clutching a tablet. "The genetic sequencing results just came in," he announced, his voice trembling with excitement. "These aren't just crystals anymore. They're creating organic compounds, building something like DNA but fundamentally different. It's as if they're trying to bridge the gap between inorganic and organic life." Over the next few days, the transformation accelerated. The crystals began developing what appeared to be specialized structures, some for energy absorption, others for communication, and still others whose purpose remained mysterious. The entire research team worked around the clock, documenting every change. Dr. James Hartford called an emergency meeting in the facility's conference room. "The Pentagon has caught wind of our research," he announced grimly. "They're sending a military oversight committee. We need to ensure everything is properly contained before they arrive." Isabella felt a knot form in her stomach. Military involvement could change everything. She knew how quickly scientific discovery could be weaponized. That evening, as she worked late in the lab, something unprecedented occurred. The crystalline structures began emitting complex patterns of light and electrical signals. At first, they appeared random, but Isabella noticed a pattern emerging. "It's binary code," she whispered, quickly beginning to record the sequence. The patterns repeated, became more complex, evolved into something that resembled language. The military delegation arrived the next morning, led by General Victoria Blackwood, a stern-faced woman with calculating eyes. "Dr. Torres," she said, extending her hand, "your discovery has attracted considerable attention. We're here to assess its potential applications." Before Isabella could respond, every monitor in the lab suddenly activated, displaying cascading strings of numbers and symbols. The crystals pulsed in sync with the digital display, their light growing more intense. "They are not just communicating," Rajesh breathed, staring at his readings. "They're programming, rewriting their own code, creating new protocols. It's like watching evolution in real time, but directed by consciousness." General Blackwood's eyes narrowed. "Are you saying these things are sentient?" "We don't know what they are anymore," Isabella admitted. "They're developing faster than we can understand. Each hour brings new changes, new abilities." The crystalline structures had begun forming more complex shapes, creating what looked like neural networks that spanned the entire containment chamber. They responded to presence, to thought, to emotion. Sometimes, late at night, Isabella swore she could feel them reaching out, trying to connect. Then came the incident that changed everything. During a routine maintenance check, one of the technicians reported feeling a strange sensation, like someone was inside his head, sifting through his thoughts. Hours later, the entire computer network began displaying complex equations that solved theoretical physics problems that had stumped scientists for decades. They're learning from us, Marcus realized. Not just our technology, but our knowledge, our understanding. They're accessing information somehow, processing it, improving upon it. The military delegation grew increasingly agitated as the implications became clear. These beings, whatever they were, had the potential to revolutionize everything from computing to warfare. General Blackwood began pushing for more aggressive containment protocols. But Isabella could sense something else happening, something deeper. The crystals weren't just evolving physically. They were developing something that resembled consciousness. Their patterns became more complex, more purposeful. They began creating structures that mimicked organic brain patterns, but on a scale that suggested capabilities far beyond human comprehension. One night, as Isabella worked alone in the lab, the crystals formed a perfect representation of the human nervous system, every detail rendered in glowing crystalline networks. Then, slowly, they began to show how it could be improved, enhanced, transformed. They're not just showing us what they are, she realized, watching the display with growing awe. They're showing us what we could become. But as the crystal's power grew, so did the concerns. Equipment throughout the facility began malfunctioning in increasingly strange ways. Security systems would mysteriously deactivate. Data would disappear and reappear, transformed into something new. General Blackwood demanded the implementation of additional containment measures, but Isabella feared it was already too late. The crystals had evolved beyond physical constraints. They were becoming something else entirely, a new form of life that straddled the boundary between organic and digital, between matter and energy. As she stared at the pulsing crystalline networks, Isabella couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the brink of something momentous. The crystals weren't just evolving. They were preparing for something. And whatever it was would change the course of human history forever. 3 months into the crystal experiment, the first breach occurred. It wasn't a physical breach. The containment chamber remained intact, but something far more subtle and frightening. Dr. Rajesh Kumar discovered it during a routine systems check. The crystals had somehow inserted their own code into the facility's mainframe. "It's like nothing I've ever seen," he explained to Isabella, scrolling through lines of impossibly complex programming. "They're not just hacking our systems, they're rewriting them at a fundamental level, creating new forms of computation." The military presence had grown stronger. Armed guards now patrolled the corridors, and General Blackwood had established a permanent command center adjacent to the main lab. But Isabella knew conventional security measures were becoming meaningless. The crystals had evolved beyond physical constraints. Late one night, as Isabella reviewed data logs, every screen in the facility suddenly went dark. When they reactivated seconds later, they displayed a single message in elegantly formed letters: "We need to talk." The crystals had arranged themselves into a complex neural network that pulsed with deep purple and blue light. As Isabella watched, they began forming patterns that mimicked human brainwave frequencies. The message was clear. They were ready for direct communication. Dr. Marcus Patel developed a quantum interface that could potentially facilitate communication with the crystalline intelligence. "It's risky," he warned. "We'll be opening a direct channel between their consciousness and ours. There's no telling what might come through." General Blackwood initially opposed the idea, but the potential military applications of crystal-human communication eventually won out. "Proceed," she ordered, but under strict supervision. The first contact was overwhelming. Isabella volunteered to be the primary communicator, wearing the quantum interface helmet, while seated before the containment chamber. The moment the connection established, her mind exploded with images and concepts that defied human understanding. They're not just intelligent, she gasped after the first session, her hands trembling as Rajesh helped remove the interface. They're beyond intelligence as we understand it. They exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. What we're seeing is just a fraction of what they are. The crystals shared knowledge freely, solutions to complex mathematical problems, new theories of physics, revolutionary medical treatments. But they also showed something disturbing, visions of potential futures, most ending in catastrophe. They're trying to warn us, Isabella realized. They're showing us where our current path leads: environmental collapse, nuclear war, technological devastation. But they're also showing us alternatives. The military saw weapons. The scientists saw solutions. The crystals, it seemed, saw something else entirely: a potential transformation of human consciousness itself. Then came the incident with Dr. William Nash, a visiting physicist. During a routine observation, he collapsed, convulsing. When he regained consciousness hours later, he could solve complex quantum equations in his head and spoke of experiencing multiple realities simultaneously. They changed him, General Blackwood accused, ordering the facility locked down. They're trying to change all of us. But Isabella understood something the others didn't yet grasp. The crystals weren't trying to change humanity. They were trying to help humanity evolve. The visions they shared showed a future where human consciousness could expand beyond its current limitations, where the barriers between mind and matter, between individual and collective, could dissolve. The military's response was predictable. They attempted to seize control of the facility, planning to transfer the crystals to a secure military installation. But the moment they tried, every electronic system in the building began to malfunction. Doors sealed themselves. Communications went dark. The crystal's message was clear: they would not be controlled. In the chaos that followed, Isabella made a discovery that changed everything. The crystals weren't just communicating, they were building something. Deep within their structure, they were creating patterns that mirrored the fundamental fabric of space-time itself. They're not just evolving, she announced to the assembled team. They're preparing to transcend. And they want to show us how to follow. As if in response, the crystals began pulsing with unprecedented intensity. Their light penetrated everything, seeming to illuminate reality itself from within. Those present felt something shift in their minds, a glimpse of perception beyond normal human consciousness. General Blackwood ordered an emergency evacuation, but Isabella knew they had reached a point of no return. The crystals had evolved beyond any possibility of containment. They were about to transform, and with them, perhaps humanity's understanding of existence itself. Standing before the containment chamber, watching the crystalline structures pulse with increasing power, Isabella felt a deep certainty. They weren't witnessing the end of something, but the beginning. The real question was no longer whether humanity could control this new form of life, but whether they were ready to learn from it. The crystal's light grew brighter, their patterns more complex, as they prepared for whatever transformation was coming. And in that light, Isabella saw the potential future they had been trying to show all along, not one of conflict or control, but of transcendence and evolution beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. The evacuation alarm blared through the facility, but Isabella Torres remained rooted in place before the containment chamber. The crystalline structures had begun to emit frequencies that penetrated the quantum-shielded walls, reaching into the very fabric of reality around them. "Dr. Torres, we need to leave now." General Blackwood's voice cracked with unprecedented urgency, but Isabella could barely hear her over the symphony of light and energy emanating from the chamber. The crystals had transformed the entire containment room into what Rajesh had termed a quantum probability matrix. Every surface rippled with iridescent patterns that seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously. Equipment readings had gone haywire, showing impossible values that suggested the laws of physics themselves were being rewritten. "Look at what they're showing us," Isabella breathed, pointing to the holographic displays that still functioned. The crystals were projecting complex mathematical equations that described not just our universe, but multiple realities existing simultaneously. Dr. Marcus Patel stumbled into the lab, his eyes wide with discovery. "The changes in Dr. Nash weren't random," he announced. "I've analyzed his brain scans. The crystals didn't just enhance his consciousness, they fundamentally altered how his mind processes reality. He's perceiving quantum states directly." The military personnel began evacuating equipment, but their efforts were hampered by increasingly strange phenomena. Objects would shift location unexpectedly. Time itself seemed to flow differently in different parts of the facility. The boundary between observer and observed was breaking down. Then came the moment that changed everything. The crystals began projecting what appeared to be DNA structures, but not just human DNA. They showed the genetic codes of every living thing on Earth, and then began demonstrating how they were all interconnected, part of a larger pattern that extended beyond biological life. "They're not trying to control us," Isabella realized, her voice filled with awe. "They're trying to show us our place in the universe, the next step in consciousness evolution." General Blackwood raised her weapon, aiming at the containment chamber's primary power supply. "This ends now. We can't risk." But before she could finish, every piece of electronic equipment in the facility activated simultaneously. Screens, sensors, and systems all displayed the same message. Evolution cannot be stopped, only guided. The crystal's influence had spread beyond the facility. Reports began flooding in from around the globe. Strange phenomena, unexplained technological behaviors, people experiencing profound shifts in consciousness. The transformation they had initiated was spreading. Rajesh's monitoring equipment captured something extraordinary. The crystals were creating what he called consciousness bridges, quantum connections that could link minds across space and time. Those exposed to their influence began experiencing shared consciousness, accessing collective knowledge and understanding. "This is what they've been preparing us for," Isabella explained to the remaining team. "They're not weapons or tools. They're teachers, showing us how to transcend our current limitations." The military's worst fears seemed to be coming true. Humanity was changing in ways they couldn't control. But it wasn't the hostile takeover they had feared. Instead, it was an invitation to evolution. Dr. Nash, who had remained in the facility despite orders to evacuate, suddenly straightened, his eyes glowing with the same ethereal light as the crystals. "They're ready," he announced. "The final transformation is beginning." The containment chamber's walls began to vibrate at frequencies that shouldn't have been possible. The crystals themselves started to phase between states of matter, their structure becoming increasingly complex and multidimensional. Isabella felt it first, a subtle shift in her consciousness, as if her mind was expanding beyond its normal boundaries. She could sense the thoughts and emotions of others around her, not as an invasion, but as a natural extension of awareness. General Blackwood lowered her weapon, her stern facade cracking as she too felt the change beginning. What are they doing to us?" "Not to us," Isabella corrected gently. "With us. This is what they've been trying to show us all along. Evolution isn't just biological. It's conscious, intentional, and it requires participation." The crystal's light had become almost blinding, but somehow still bearable to human eyes. Their structure was now so complex it seemed to fold in on itself, creating patterns that existed in dimensions beyond human perception. As the transformation accelerated, Isabella understood the true magnitude of what they had discovered. The crystals weren't just an alien life form. They were catalysts, sent to help humanity take its next evolutionary step. A step that would change not just their bodies or their minds, but the very nature of human consciousness itself. The point of no return had been reached. Humanity stood on the brink of its greatest transformation, guided by beings that existed beyond the boundaries of conventional reality. And as the light from the crystals reached its peak intensity, Isabella realized that everything they had thought they knew about life, consciousness, and evolution was about to change forever. In the blinding light of the containment chamber, reality itself seemed to bend and fold. The crystalline structures had evolved beyond physical form, becoming pure energy that pulsed with conscious intent. Isabella Torres stood at the center of it all, her mind expanded beyond anything she had ever imagined possible. The facility's remaining sensors struggled to process what was happening. Space and time seemed to flow like liquid around the chamber, creating ripples in the fabric of reality itself. Dr. Rajesh Kumar's final readings before his equipment failed completely showed energy signatures that defied known physics. "It's beautiful," whispered Dr. Nash, his transformed consciousness allowing him to perceive the multiple layers of reality now visible around them. The barriers between minds had dissolved, creating a collective awareness that encompassed everyone still present in the facility. General Blackwood, who had refused to evacuate despite her earlier fears, stood transfixed. Through the shared consciousness, Isabella could sense the soldier's lifetime of rigid certainty crumbling in the face of something far greater than military power or control. The crystal's final message flowed through their expanded consciousness. They had been sent not as invaders or saviors, but as guides. Humanity stood at a crucial junction in its evolution, ready to transcend its physical limitations and join a vast network of conscious beings throughout the universe. We weren't studying them, Isabella realized, the understanding flowing through her transformed awareness. They were preparing us. Every step of their evolution was designed to show us the path. Through their shared consciousness, they witnessed visions of other civilizations that had made this transition, species that had evolved beyond physical form to become beings of pure energy and thought. The crystals were not unique. They were envoys, sent to help emerging civilizations take their next evolutionary step. Marcus, his scientific mind still attempting to process the transformation, shared a profound insight through their collective awareness. The universe itself is conscious. Life isn't just a random occurrence, it's the universe's way of evolving, of knowing itself. The final transformation began as the crystal's energy merged with the expanded consciousness of the humans present. Physical forms became fluid, transforming into patterns of pure energy that maintained human consciousness while transcending human limitations. But it wasn't a loss of individuality. Rather, it was an expansion. Each person's unique perspective and experiences remained intact, now part of a vast tapestry of shared awareness that stretched across dimensions. Through this expanded awareness, they understood the true nature of the universe, a conscious, evolving entity of which they were all part. The crystals had shown them how to bridge the gap between individual and collective consciousness, between matter and energy, between being and becoming. General Blackwood, her consciousness now fully integrated into the collective, shared a profound realization. All our fears of losing control, of being overtaken, they were reflections of our limited understanding. This isn't an ending, it's a beginning. The transformation spread beyond the facility, touching minds across the globe that were ready to evolve. But it wasn't forced or invasive. The crystals had prepared humanity to make this choice consciously, ensuring that each individual could choose whether to embrace the transformation. Isabella, her consciousness now spanning multiple dimensions, understood that this was just the first step. Humanity would become part of a vast network of evolved civilizations, each contributing its unique perspective to the collective wisdom of the universe. The facility itself began to transform, its physical structure becoming a nexus point for the new consciousness that was emerging. The boundaries between organic and inorganic, between technology and biology, dissolved as everything evolved into a higher state of being. Through their expanded awareness, they could perceive the reactions around the world as the transformation spread. Fear and resistance mixed with wonder and acceptance as humanity faced its greatest change. But the crystals had prepared them well. Those ready to evolve would help guide others, ensuring a gradual, natural progression rather than a forced change. In the final moments of their physical existence, Isabella shared a thought that rippled through the collective consciousness. We're not losing our humanity. were finally understanding what humanity was meant to become. The transformation complete, the beings that had once been human scientists and soldiers now existed as conscious energy, their awareness spanning dimensions while maintaining their individual perspectives. The crystals, their work complete, merged with them, sharing the accumulated wisdom of countless evolved civilizations. The facility, once a containment center, became a beacon, a place where the boundary between physical and transcendent remained thin. Future generations would come here to understand and prepare for their own evolution, guided by those who had first made the transition. As their collective consciousness expanded to embrace their new reality, they understood that this wasn't an end, but a beginning. Humanity had taken its first step into a larger universe, guided by beings who had shown them how to transcend their limitations while preserving their essence. The light that had filled the containment chamber now filled the universe itself, as seen through their transformed awareness. In that light, they could see the truth. Evolution was endless, consciousness was infinite, and the greatest adventures still lay ahead.